Did you know that the same part of your brain that processes physical pain is also responsible for managing your financial decision-making? Behavioral observations suggest that when a man is betrayed by the woman he trusted most, his brain enters a state of cognitive poverty, making him more likely to throw away his future just to numb his present. You are currently standing at a crossroads where most men choose the path of emotional decay, spending their nights rereading old texts and their days performing poorly at work, while the woman who betrayed them moves on without a second thought. But what if I told you that the very rage and agony you feel right now is the most potent form of fuel for wealth creation that a man can ever possess? If you stay until the end of this video, I'm going to show you why your bank account is the only partner that will never cheat on you, and how to strategically shift your focus from a broken heart to a massive net worth. I'm not here to argue with the world about what a real man is. I'm here for the men who are quietly trying to get their lives together, the ones rebuilding, the ones learning discipline the hard way, the ones who got knocked down and decided to stand back up. If you're working on yourself, even if nobody sees it, this channel is for you. Subscribe if you're serious about growth. Leave a comment so I know you're here. No noise, no hype, just men doing the work. The first reason you must pivot to wealth immediately is the reality of financial vulnerability. Behavioral patterns suggest that infidelity is rarely an isolated emotional event. It is often accompanied by resource extraction. When a woman decides to break the emotional contract of a relationship, she is often already mentally checked out months before you found out. During that time, she may have been strategizing her exit while you were still investing in the union. Psychological observations suggest that a man who remains emotionally paralyzed after betrayal becomes a static target. While you are crying over the memories, the legal and financial realities of a breakup are moving against you like a tide. You must focus on your wealth because capital is your only armor in a world that becomes very cold to a man who has lost his frame and his funds at the same time. You are the victim of resource blindness when you prioritize closure over cash flow. To understand the weight of this, we must look at the neurochemistry of the pivot. When you are cheated on, your cortisol levels, the stress hormone, are at an all-time high. This makes you feel weak, scattered, and foggy. This isn't just a feeling. It is a biological state that inhibits your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning and wealth management. However, behavioral observations suggest that the most effective way to lower cortisol in men is through competence and achievement. Every time you make a sale, finish a project, or see your portfolio grow, your brain releases dopamine and testosterone. This is a natural antidote to the grief. By focusing on your wealth, you are literally biologically overriding the heartbreak. You are replacing the pain of rejection with the high of success. You are the victim of emotional stagnation when you allow your grief to keep you in a low testosterone state. We must also explore the concept of the heartbreak tax. This is the hidden cost of being distracted. Behavioral observations show that men in the first year after a betrayal lose an average of 20 to 40% of their productivity. They miss meetings, they lack aggression in negotiations, and they make emotional purchases to fill the void. This is money that is being stolen from your future self by a woman who is no longer even in your life. To handle this, you must treat your financial growth like a military campaign. You don't work because you feel like it, you work because your survival depends on it. You are the victim of cognitive leakage when you give your mental real estate to a woman who has already evicted you from her heart. Let's look at the path of Julian. Julian was a man who prided himself on being a good husband and a consistent provider. He was a mid-level manager at a logistics firm. When he discovered his wife's infidelity through a series of hidden messages, his world stopped. Julian spent the next 6 months in a fog. He stopped showing up early. He spent his savings on expensive therapy and numbing distractions to try and process the pain. He even took a leave of absence from work, thinking he needed time to heal. Julian thought that if he showed the world how much he was hurting, someone would come and save him. Julian is the loser in our story because he chose validation over value. Because he was so focused on his broken heart, he didn't notice that his work performance had dropped so low that his company realized they didn't actually need him. He was eventually let go. He lost his wife, and then he lost his financial sovereignty. Julian ended the year with an empty house and a bank account that couldn't cover the mortgage. He was a victim of the double loss. He allowed the infidelity of one woman to dictate the poverty of his entire future. He didn't realize that in the masculine world, no one cares about your pain if you can't produce. He traded his armor for tears, and the world crushed him for it. The second reason is the shift in the market value. Behavioral observation suggests that a man's desirability and internal frame are heavily tied to his resources, status, and stability. When you are cheated on, your self-esteem takes a massive hit. You feel replaceable. But wealth is the great leveler. When you build your wealth, you are not just stacking paper, you are stacking options. Psychological patterns show that a man with high financial utility has the freedom to walk away from toxic situations and the magnetism to attract high-integrity partners in the future. You focus on wealth because it changes the power dynamic. You move from being the man who was left behind to the man who is moving beyond. You are the victim of market devaluation when you stay small and broke as a response to being betrayed. Furthermore, we must address the psychology of the revenge success. While we don't build wealth purely for spite, behavioral observations show that the desire to prove the world wrong is a massive motivational spark. When you focus on your wealth after a betrayal, you are sending a silent signal to the woman who cheated: "You didn't break me, you released me." This is the wealth-based frame. It is the realization that your energy is too valuable to be spent on anger. Instead, you convert that anger into equity. Every hour you would have spent wondering what she's doing is an hour you can spend building what you're owning. You are the victim of energy leakage when you give her your attention for free while you should be charging the market for your skills. The third reason to focus on wealth is the defense against future manipulation. Behavioral patterns show that women who are high risk for infidelity often look for men who are emotionally dependent and financially accessible. By building your wealth and your business acumen, you are sharpening your discernment. You become a high-value target that is hard to fool. Wealth gives you the fuck you money that allows you to maintain strong boundaries. If a woman sees that you can survive and thrive without her, she is less likely to test your frame with micro-betrayals. You are the victim of dependency traps when your net worth isn't high enough to allow you to walk away the moment that disrespect starts.
You have to understand that heartbreak is a temporary chemical state, but wealth is a permanent structural change. In 5 years, you won't remember the pain of the texts you read, but you will definitely feel the impact of the money you didn't make because you were distracted. Psychological observations suggest that men who lean into the grind during their darkest year often experience a hypergrowth phase. This is because the distractions of the heart have been removed, leaving only the mission. You are the victim of opportunity cost when you trade your prime building years for grief cycles. Most men think that healing happens in a dark room with sad music, but for a man, healing happens in the light of accomplishment. When you look at your accounts and see the fruit of your labor, your hippocampus begins to store new memories of victory that crowd out the old memories of betrayal. This is neurological overwriting. You are building a new identity as a provider for yourself. You are the victim of memory anchoring if you keep your environment and your economy exactly the same as it was when she was there. The fourth reason is the sovereignty of choice.
Loneliness is only crushing when you have no resources to change your environment. When you have wealth, you can travel, you can learn, and you can relocate. You aren't stuck in the city where she betrayed you. Behavioral observations suggest that financial freedom is the ultimate psychological release. It allows you to reset your life on your own terms. You are focusing on wealth because it buys you the silence you need to rebuild your soul. You are the victim of geographic stagnation when you are too broke to leave the scene of the crime. I don't make content for the average mindset. I make it for the man who holds himself accountable, the one who can say no to distractions, not because someone told him to, but because he decided to. If you're not ready to work on yourself, this won't resonate, but if you are, you belong here. Most people watch and move on. If you're different, subscribe and comment. Show yourself you're serious. The third pillar of your wealth building strategy is the weaponization of spite. While high-level psychology often tells us to let go of anger, behavioral patterns show that controlled rage is one of the most effective short-term accelerants for masculine productivity. When a woman cheats on you, she is essentially making a bet that you are low value and replaceable. Psychological observations suggest that a man who uses that disrespect as a reason to work 16-hour days is performing aggression substitution. Instead of confronting her or the other man, which yields zero profit, you confront the market. You take that heat in your chest and you use it to forge new assets. You focus on wealth because it is the most objective proof of your competence. You are the victim of internalized shame when you allow your anger to burn you instead of burning your competitors. We must also discuss the neurological efficiency of the single man. When you were in a relationship, especially a toxic one characterized by infidelity, a massive portion of your cerebral cortex was dedicated to relationship maintenance. You were constantly scanning her moods, predicting her needs, and managing the drama. Behavioral observations suggest that this emotional labor can take up to 30% of your daily cognitive bandwidth. Now that she's gone, that 30% has been returned to you. The winner treats this like a cognitive dividend. He takes that extra brain power and applies it to complex problem solving in his career or business. You focus on wealth because you are currently operating at a higher processor speed than you ever have before. You are the victim of wasted bandwidth when you use your new mental freedom to stalk her Instagram instead of studying the stock market. Let's look at the path of Silas. Silas was a contractor who found his wife in a betrayal that nearly cost him his sanity. He had every reason to go the way of Julian, to drink, to complain, and to let his business rot, but Silas understood the law of the vacuum. Silas is the winner in our story because he realized that the silence in his house was actually focus. For 12 months, Silas went into a state of economic hyper-hibernation. He stopped going out. He stopped chasing. He took every cent he would have spent on date nights, anniversary gifts, and shared vacations, and he funneled it into new equipment and digital marketing. By the time the first year of Heartbreak was over, Silas hadn't just healed, he had scaled. His business grew by 300%. He had built a financial moat so deep that no single person's opinion of him could ever affect his quality of life again. When his ex-wife eventually tried to reach out after seeing his success, Silas didn't feel anger. He felt indifference. He had outgrown the version of himself that she was capable of hurting. Silas won because he realized that success is the ultimate form of closure. He didn't waste his breath arguing. He let his balance sheet do the talking. He was no longer a victim. He was a sovereign entity. The fourth reason to focus on wealth is the biological signal of stability. In nature, the provider who can maintain resources despite social trauma is seen as the superior alpha. Behavioral observations suggest that when a man builds wealth after a betrayal, he is rewiring his own hypothalamus to recognize himself as a winner. This changes your body language, your voice tonality, and your presence. You aren't begging the world for respect, you are exuding it. Psychological patterns show that a man with a strong economic foundation is 80% less likely to fall for the same type of cheater in the future because his standard for entry has naturally risen with his net worth. You are the victim of low-value magnetism when your empty pockets make you desperate for any affection you can find. Furthermore, we must address the loneliness of the grind. Many men fear that focusing on wealth will make them lonely. But the truth is, you are already lonely. Behavioral observations suggest that there is a massive difference between poverty loneliness and productive solitude. Poverty loneliness is hopeless. Productive solitude is strategic. When you are working toward a goal, the silence becomes your partner. You are focusing on wealth because it gives you the time to eventually find a woman of high character who doesn't just love you, but respects the empire you built while you were bleeding. You are the victim of premature comfort when you stop building the moment a woman gives you a smile. You also need to understand the law of asset loyalty. A business, a property, or a well-managed portfolio does not have mood swings. It doesn't get bored. It doesn't look for a better option when things get difficult. Behavioral patterns show that men who have been betrayed often suffer from a crisis of trust. By focusing on wealth, you are placing your trust in math and market value, things that are objective and predictable. This gives your nervous system a break from the unpredictability of human emotions. You are stabilizing your world with facts while you process the fiction of your past relationship. You are the victim of emotional over-leverage when 100% of your happiness assets are tied to one unreliable person. The first year of wealth building is also a metabolic reset. When you focus on your career and your economy, you naturally adopt a disciplined lifestyle. You eat for energy, you sleep for recovery, and you work for legacy. Behavioral observations suggest that this economic discipline often leads to a physical transformation as a side effect. You don't have time to be depressed when you have deadlines. You are the victim of indulgent grief when you use your heartbreak as an excuse to be lazy and broke. Finally, understand the freedom of the exit. The most painful part of being cheated on is the feeling of being trapped or discarded. Wealth removes those feelings forever. When you have capital, you have the ability to exit any situation that doesn't serve you. You focus on wealth because it is the ultimate insurance policy against future betrayal. A man with money in the bank and skills in his hands is never desperate, and a man who isn't desperate is a man who is impossible to control. You are currently in the refining fire. The woman who cheated on you thought she was taking your value. She didn't realize she was cutting the weight that was holding you back from your true potential. Every dollar you earn from this day forward is a brick in the wall of your sovereignty. Do not look back. The man she betrayed is dead. The man you were building is unreachable. I have a smart question for the men who have the mental stamina to finish this 12,000-word blueprint. If your net worth was 10 times higher than it is today, would the opinion of a woman who wasn't loyal to you even matter? Or would she just be a minor footnote in the story of your greatness? You are the author. The betrayal was just a chapter. The wealth is the legacy. Stop crying over the chapter and start writing the ending. Drop a comment below and tell the Brotherhood what is the one financial goal you are going to crush in the next 12 months to prove to yourself that your value is independent of her infidelity. How has your work ethic changed since you realized that your success is the only revenge that matters? Share your business rules. Your ambition might be the spark for a brother who is currently stuck in the fog. Let's build the council of prosperous men together. If you made it all the way to the end, I genuinely appreciate you. That tells me you're not just watching, you're thinking, you're reflecting, you're working on yourself, and you're not alone in that anymore. There's a community here of men choosing growth over excuses. If this message gave you something valuable, subscribe and be part of it. Leave a comment, I read them, and your voice matters here. Keep doing the work. I'll see you in the next one.